Hi all, welcome to another episode of Saturday Architecture. We are continuing this series of customer experience. We thought we will delve deeper into a very short episode on who is a customer and what are the aspirations of a customer for the systems or the applications that we are building. If it's a simple thing, it could be one application, but if it's a complex thing, we might have multiple applications working together. As an architect, who do we see as customers and what are their aspirations? Deepak?
So I think my definition of the customer, right? So they are like, if you go and talk to a lot of architects, and there is a sort of a definition of who the customer is. In my definition is the customer is the first customer which the architect needs to worry about. There are multiple customers. The first customer which the architect needs to worry about is who is paying for the system, right? Right. So somebody who is paying. So usually the subtle differences which architects try to make is this is who is the customer. Customer is the one who is paying for the system, and then there is a user, right? User is who's actually using the system, who is the end user. And end users may have different personas, right? So that is where I start the difference. Somebody who is paying for the system, I need to understand why they are paying for the system, what is the value they are going to get for it, right? End users are trying to perform some business process with it, right? Though, and there are, I mean, in some words we can call them customers, but I would rather call them as end users or the users of the applications which I'm going to do, and they will have personas. So that is, they are more concerned about making sure that they are able to perform the task which their persona requires them to do, right? And then, as we said last time, there is the user experience and there is the user interface, right? And then they are concerned about the business process they are trying to execute with that application, and then the user interface which they are going to interact with. That is what comes to my mind when I start thinking about how to relate to customers. The paying part of the customer, that person or that organization may not be the actual user of or they may be only a marginal user of that application, right? So because they are at some end of the business process which that application is trying to accomplish, right? So we need to see it from that perspective. Somebody is paying, somebody is using, somebody is experiencing that application.
Okay. Venkat?
Yeah, so when you ask me to develop some system and think of the customer as rightly mentioned with Deepak, I first think of the end users who is going to use, and other thing comes to my mind is whether we have capabilities to develop. So I will also consider the team as a customer who is going to develop the system. So because which we don't have such a team, and you are thinking Wi-Fi system, then when we go to the implementation stage, then that time we may need to struggle how to get it implemented. So I'll think of first what is the technologies team is available and what is our end customer. Then I will try to ditch both. Okay, this using this technology we can reach this customer, and obviously we need UI UX or how to develop. No, those are the things will come to the part of the system. So and yeah, obviously so since he is working with big MNC and big project, he might be thinking the investors. But since a startup company, and my thought is something put it into the team and the end users. Yeah, that is
Okay.
the customer, I think.
Interesting.
So one important thing about sometimes the customer is actually also the user, right? Especially external facing systems, because he's paying for your service. So the customer is also your user. So that is the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, uh, there is one place where the same person is the customer and same person is the user also.
Interesting. Nishanth?
Yeah.
Yeah, in my view, each persona or the end user who is going to use this customer is having high value than those who paying for that. Why? Because eventually what happens is like when we develop an application and finally it will be used by the finally it is intended for the end user, and if the end user start using that and if we create more customer experience and value, the customers or the end user means those who are giving very positive feedback, or if it is an internal application, the productivity gain this application is bringing, all these things will eventually convert into a revenue for the customer who is paying for this. So finally, the end objective should be like we should have an idea on each and every persona who is going to use this system, and that should be the main driving factor.
Yeah, so I rightly, yeah, I
Go
get
ahead.
yeah, sorry to interrupt. So I slightly differ from the Nishanth, because when you are giving the high value to the customer, the batch what you are paying for, I would say right value, because when you are giving the high value, they might not be realized.
Yeah,
they might
exactly.
take it as granted.
Yeah,
You know,
that is the right, right value.
Yeah,
I think it's
that's what I
great.
would say.
I think it's for me how I kind of look at it. I think it's a personal thing, right? One of the thing how I look at stuff is basically it is like I kind of say that for me, I think even when I started working, one of the switches I did in my mind before architecture or anything itself, right? When I joined my second job, I always wanted to run my own company. So one of the things I said is everybody other than me is a customer to me. Okay. So my peers are my customers. My manager is my customer. Okay. The HR is my customer. My actual customer is my customer, like that. So for me, it was a little easy to kind of tackle this animal. To me, if not me, anybody else is a customer. That's it. Okay.
I think that's the philosophy part of it. Yeah, I think that is your internal philosophy, that how you see who you are providing a service to.
Correct. And how that when it became architecture, this kind of evolved or morphed into the actual investor who's giving the money, right? The project sponsor itself. Indirectly, the end users are actually giving money. Okay, in a B2C kind of a scenario, the investor is putting money so that the actual customer will give money. So I have two people who are giving me money. Okay.
Right.
Then the other customers who come up is the program managers. They are my customers because they need to be comfortable with the solution that I'm providing them. If I don't, they don't feel good. So their expectation is this solution should make me a hero. Okay. And if you look at it, the other thing which Venkat says, completely agree, is about the developers, right? And the one other customer which I kind of keep very consciously in my mind is the ops people. They are usually the customers who are not considered in the scheme of things. It's like taken for granted. Okay. And I usually find for a success of an application, the ops people become very critical. Once you have gone into production, if the ops are not treated well, then that app system has a very good probability of failing. So, so there are expectations if you look at it, right? The others are pretty clear. Let me just dwell. Ops expectations is, right, don't make my life miserable. If I have an 8-hour shift, don't expend it to 14 hours. Don't make me a punching bag because you are coming up with a new application. So typically, if you look at ops guys, right, who are in IT ops, they are scared when we say a new application is going to come under your portfolio. They will try to resist it as much as possible because typically when we do develop, you develop it and throw it over the fence. Now it is the ops problem. Okay, so it will be, I mean, there are simple things, right? Like, for example, I won't care about data storage. Okay, and I will say ops will take care of it. When there is a data is too much, they will truncate and they will do backups.
I think in the new world now, what you have to start saying is now the DevOps teams is my customer, not just the developer or the ops team separately, because increasingly, and I'm finding this so this is actually one place where actually DevOps can show its value, is exactly the point which you're mentioning, right? Because the developers are used to doing this, of throwing it over the fence and making the life miserable for ops. If both the teams are actually the same team, then there is no fence to throw it over, right? So it's that that's the, of course, that's the ideal which we want to target. But that is something, if the even if people start thinking about it, that yes, we need to care about ops, right? We need to make sure that ops is taken care of.
Actually,
Kumaran, just what you said is right. Incidentally, I had a meeting around two days back with operational team
okay,
about handing over a new component to them, and
okay,
we had a serious debate and discussion. Like they were keep on asking what would happen if both system down and what would be the impact. How are we going to manage this thing? So many questions. So even I was wondering, and finally, actually, I mean, after that call, actually, I had a call with that manager, and he said like in the past years, what happened is when a new component developer, they are not asking such kind of question, but finally, what happens is like operationally they will be in trouble, and final question will be to the operational team, why this is not an alerted to the respective people, why you haven't noticed this issue, so many questions. So they realized that
good point. Yeah, and
yeah, started asking so many questions before they taking the responsibility of the operational part of that application. So that is also an important customer persona. I think we should definitely consider, especially when we run an application in a SaaS model.
absolutely. And I think Deepak mentioned it in the last. I would kind of highlight that, right? DevOps, if it is in its true spirit, right, that will serve the purpose. But unfortunately, in most organizations today, just like we talk about fake agile and fake this thing, right?
Yeah.
They just renamed ops as DevOps, right? But they're not true DevOps, which means like during design, they're not involved. They don't develop any code. Nobody from the ops team is there during the architecture and design phase. And I think in your case, Nishanth, for example, right, if those team were involved, then these questions, there's no need for these questions because they will have answered these questions during your design and solutioning phase itself. Correct?
Correct, correct. Yeah, correct, exactly.
I
I
think
think,
this is where the customer part comes in. We are not treating them as customers,
ah,
right? So if one is that you involve them and they become part of your team, that is the ideal DevOps phase. But if you don't have that, at least you have to treat them as customers of your architecture.
Yeah, my point, if you link to this to agile things, actually, as we know, we have the sprint review, and we are basically intending the sprint review for the actual customer. Ideally, my view, like we should consider this operational team, the those who are the implementation team, those also should be invited for such sprint reviews.
I think that's a very great point. In fact, I realized why I was not thinking of those people, because I was thinking customer after outside the boundaries of the teams, and I think thanks to Kumaran, I'm seeing it differently of how the architect needs to treat all those parties as customers, right? The developers, the operations teams, the people taking those help desk calls, right? All the people who are going to start consuming your architecture in different aspects.
yeah, I think it's a great discussion. So it was a great discussion. Thanks all for joining. I would connect with you in the next episode.